Okay, ऐनक भी रख ली, got my book here, got everything, my chai ready, everything is
Same here.
good.
Yeah, the only bad thing about Zoom is that we can't offer each other tea.
Exactly.
Hannah?
बिल्कुल, बिल्कुल.
So, अपने अपने पी रहे होते हैं.
बिल्कुल.
But actually we are fortunate enough, alhamdulillah, कि हमारे पास technology है, हम at least बात कर सकते हैं, एक दूसरे को देख सकते हैं, alhamdulillah. That's amazing thing. जो उससे
Absolutely.
पहले नहीं, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I said the only downside is we can't offer each other tea. Otherwise, I'm
That's
just
right,
loving this
exactly.
technology.
MashaAllah,
You know, we are
बिल्कुल.
doing things we could never even dream of doing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Nazia,
Sitting together.
what was yours?
Okay.
Yes.
So, let me get my pen. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining us to discuss another important topic, especially in today's society. The topic sexual harassment has been around for decades, and yet it is still incredibly important than ever. And it is vital that we Pakistanis and Muslims have an open and honest dialogue about it. Please join us as we discuss with Ms. Malia Hussain. Ms. Malia Hussain will be talking about what kind of human behavior constitutes sexual harassment. She will also talk about the myths around female sexual harassment. For example, some women ask for it, or it's always her fault. Along with this, Ms. Hussain will also cover the two laws currently in Pakistan to curb sexual harassment and how well they are being used. Sexual harassment is any unwelcome, unwanted attention a woman experiences. Harassment can occur in any situation where the aggressor might have power over her. Welfare workers with clients, doctors with patients, or teachers with students. In the workplace, the harasser may be an employer, a supervisor, a co-worker, a client, or a customer. Aside from the fact that it is difficult to report and prove victims of sexual harassment, often worry that they are somehow to blame for the unwelcome sexual advances. They are often riddled with embarrassment and shame over what is happening to them. Consider these facts. According to the US Department of Labor, some 50 to 80% of women in the US experience some form of sexual harassment during their academic or work lives. One of the most shocking facts about sexual assault is that approximately only 5% of sexual assault reports filed have been proven false. 82% of all juvenile sexual assault victims are female. 90% of adult rape victims are female. Adolescent, age 14 to 17, were by far the most likely to be sexually victimized. Nearly 1 in 6 was sexually victimized in the past year. These statistics are mind-boggling. So before I introduce Ms. Malia Hussain, I would like to invite our very own Alliance honorary member, Sadaf Amer, who is not just a beautiful human being. She is a fashion designer, a writer, and she has written something absolutely amazing for our webinar today. Sadaf.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम एवरीवन, दिस इज सदफ आमिर. आज मैंने इस मौजू के ऊपर मैं बहुत ज़माने से इसके ऊपर बात करना चाहती थी और अल्लाह ताला ने मुझे मौका दिया नाजिया के थ्रू कि मैं इस पे बात कर सकूं. इस पोइट्री का नाम मैंने सांप रखा है क्योंकि सांप जो होते हैं वो सिर्फ लिटरली हम सांपों को देखते हैं, वो सिर्फ सांप नहीं होते, इंसानों के अंदर भी छुपे हुए बहुत से सांप हैं जो हमें डस रहे हैं डिफरेंट जगहों पर. तो ये पोइट्री उसके बारे में है और मुझे उम्मीद है कि इंशाल्लाह कि आपको अच्छी लगेगी. दर दर पे सांप हैं, दर दर पे सांप हैं जिन्हें कुचला नहीं जाता. दर दर पे सांप हैं जिन्हें कुचला नहीं जाता. कानून मखदूश हैं जिन्हें बदला नहीं जाता. ये सांप बैठे हैं ताकत की कुर्सियों पर, इन्हीं का कब्जा है हक के वारिसों पर. यही सांप होते हैं कंपनी के दफ्तरों में, यही पाए जाते हैं शुरफा के घरों में. कभी एक ताकत के नशे में चूर कमजोरों पर बरसते हैं, कभी एक गंदी नाली के कीचड़ छोटी बच्चियों को डसते हैं. कब्र में दफन औरतें भी छोड़ी नहीं जाती। ये कैसी गलाजत के कीड़े मेरे माशरे में बसते हैं। मजबूर औरतों का फायदा उठाया जाता है, इन्हें खौफजदा करके अपना जुर्म छुपाया जाता है। कभी तेजाब फेंक कर, कभी चूल्हे को फाड़ के, कभी गैरत के नाम पर जिंदगी उजाड़ के। सवाल ये है, क्यों ये सांप पकड़े नहीं जाते? क्यों ये कानून की गिरफ्त में जकड़े नहीं जाते? क्यों ये हाथ लगाते हैं? क्यों ये आवाजें कसते हैं? क्या हमारी औरत और उसके हुकूक इतने सस्ते हैं? शुक्रिया, मगर मुझे आपकी तालियों की आवाज़ नहीं चाहिए। मुझे अपनी आवाज़ के साथ आपकी आवाज़ चाहिए। मुझे कदम कदम पे तहफ़्फ़ुज़ का एहसास चाहिए। मुझे कानून की पेशरफ्त का आगाज़ चाहिए। मैं माँ हूँ, बहन हूँ, बेटी हूँ। मुझे अपने मुजरिमों का एहतसाब चाहिए। शुक्रिया।
Wow. Wow. Thank you, Sada, for your strong and spot on words. Thank you. Now, I would like to introduce our speaker for today, Ms. Malia Hussain. Malia Hussain is the executive director at Meherghar, a non-profit organization working on human rights with a special focus on the rights of women. The organization also works extensively with the youth of the country. Mehergarh hosted the Secretariat of ASHA, Alliance Against Sexual Harassment, and was actively involved in the passage of anti-sexual harassment legislation. Malia Hussain has 30 plus years experience of working on women's issue in Pakistan and the United States. Her area of focus are human rights, gender and development, and economic development. In the States, she was more involved in the economic development of women, including micro-enterprise development and microfinance. Her recent work is focused on gender equality and creating dignified work environments in Pakistan. She is actively involved in the nationwide implementation of anti-sexual harassment legislation. The two laws that were passed by the government of Pakistan at the beginning of 2010. Ms. Hussain monitors the nationwide implementation of anti-sexual harassment law and works closely with the federal and provincial governments, the private sector, and civil society to facilitate effective implementation. She guides senior management of organizations on their role in complying with the law, trains standing inquiry committee members, HR personnel, and other directly involved in the implementation process, and supports any difficult or complicated cases of sexual harassment that she's approached with. Since March 2010, when these two laws were passed, she has trained more than 23,000 professionals and facilitated more than 4,000 cases. Ms. Hussain conducts awareness sessions for the employees of organizations to inform them of the issue and the law, and also does television programs to educate the public on these laws and how to use them. I would also like to share that her sister, Ms. Fazia Said, was instrumental in making sure that a sexual harassment bill passed. And on top of that, she wrote a book titled Working with Sharks, a Pakistani woman's story of sexual harassment in the United Nations. From personal grievance to public law. Working with Sharks follows 11 indestructible women and the case that sparked a national movement and culminated in the passage of legislation that made sexual harassment a crime in Pakistan in 2010. Inspirational and poignant. Working with Sharks encourages women in any part of the world to find their voice and stand up to sexual harassment. A must read. I have my copy. And so with that said, let's welcome Ms. Malia Hussain. Malia, you're muted. Can't hear you. You're muted?
I turned it off so that I didn't disturb you. Okay, can you hear me now?
Perfect.
All right, good. So, do you just want me to talk about what kind of, you said, human behavior that constitutes sexual harassment? So I can start with that. I'm not exactly sure about the states, but in Pakistan, I know that sexual harassment is still a stigmatized issue. People don't like to talk about it. It's very tabooed to talk about sexual harassment. I think just using the word sex is a taboo, not realizing that our sex, we are all human beings, and our sex is one of our natural biological identities, whether I'm a man or a woman or a transgender. Uh, that is an identity that I will be living with throughout my life. Uh, so it's not really a bad word. Uh, if a person is harassed because of being a man or a woman or a transgender, it's called sexual harassment, being harassed because of their sex. So just because we don't talk about it a lot of very educated people uh, don't know exactly what kind of human behaviors constitute sexual harassment. Uh, I basically focus on the definition which is given in the Pakistani law. But when you look at other definitions of sexual harassment, they are quite similar. So the first thing is that making the other person uncomfortable because of their sex, generally speaking. But then how do we make the other person uncomfortable? It could be something like I think the first important thing is that sexual harassment or any form of harassment is unwelcomed. One person is saying or doing something, the other person does not want it. It could be a sexual favor, it could be a sexual advance, and it can be verbal, which means that any sound that comes out of your mouth, if you look at somebody and whistle in a certain way, if it makes the other person uncomfortable, it can constitute sexual harassment. Then any word, any phrase, any verse, and in our Pakistani Muslims, sometimes even words in Arabic can also be considered sexual harassment. On the one hand, we say that we feel good about reciting Arabic, but when we say words like mashallah or subhanallah to a person that we really don't have that relationship with or that comfort level with, uh, and if it makes the other person uncomfortable, even that can be considered sexual harassment. Then it can be something written, like you can write something on a piece of paper, something inappropriate, something of a sexual nature. It could be a text message or any form of communication in writing. Something of a sexual nature that makes the other person uncomfortable is considered sexual harassment. Then if we move forward, any physical conduct of a sexual nature. And I think it starts with the way we look at other people. We're all looking at one another all day long and we don't make others uncomfortable. But when you look at somebody with an inappropriate intention, the other person can tell. And sometimes people start staring at the other person's certain body parts. And that stare is so intense that, you can almost feel it on your body. If somebody is doing it because of the sex of the other person, that is also sexual harassment. The gestures, different gestures of a sexual nature, touching somebody as you pass by, pinching them, rubbing your body against them. Sometimes we pretend that there isn't enough space and we rub our bodies against the other person. And it goes all the way up to sexual assault. So all these things are sexual harassment, but these things are kind of easy to understand, whether it's verbal or written or physical act of a sexual nature. But if we sort of look beyond this, sexually demeaning attitudes are also considered sexual harassment. We, like Pakistan, and even in the United States, actually most of the countries in the world today have a patriarchal system, male-dominated society. Even in Western countries where women talk about women's rights, and there is definitely more equality than some of the developing countries. But even there, men have a higher status in the society, women have a slightly lower status in the society, and as to transgenders, if your attitude or any word makes the other person feel like you are demeaning them because of their sex, even that can be considered sexual harassment. Then another aspect of it that happens mostly at work is that when one person at work asks a colleague or a subordinate for any sexual favor, whether it's becoming a friend or going out or going to see a movie or inviting them at home because they are interested in the other person because of their sex. If the other person is not interested and they say, thank you very much, I'm not interested, if the first person still continues, it is sexual harassment. But at times what happens is that because the other person refused, the first person, if he or she has a big ego, they start punishing the other person because they said no. And in a work environment, different ways of punishing them are like you give them more work, you give them unrealistic deadlines, you can withhold information that they need to do their work properly. You can badmouth them in front of other people. You can be rude to them in a meeting, or you can ask them to stay late. The idea is to punish them because they said no. The reason they said no to a sexual advance or a sexual favor, everything that they do after that to punish the other person is also considered sexual harassment. And one other thing that constitutes sexual harassment is, quid pro quo, making it a condition either for employment or for a promotion in a work environment or for asking for a favor, a sexual favor, where you will do something in return for them. And we see different scenarios of that around the world. It's a global phenomenon. So these are like some of the things, some of the basic things that constitute sexual harassment. When we talk about verbal, it could be, a dirty joke. It could be things that have dual meaning. You are saying one thing which can also mean something sexual. So a lot of this. I usually talk to groups of people where we are interacting with one another. With what I've said so far, would you like to ask any questions, or would any of you like to comment on this before I move forward?
Mariapa, one thing while growing up in Pakistan, it was
Yes.
like even from our elders, we used to hear, एक तो शाम को बाहर मत जाओ क्योंकि मतलब कि लड़कियां नहीं जाती हैं बाहर, लड़के जा सकते हैं, लड़कियां नहीं जाती हैं, कपड़े ऐसे नहीं पहनती हैं. अगर आप ऐसे कपड़े पहनोगे तो ऑब्वियसली फिर तो लोग कहेंगे ही ना. So don't wear certain clothes. Why, this is something that I think we need to educate. I mean, I don't know if we can educate our elders now, but like more talk about it.
Yeah,
Why
I think this is
the
very
woman's
important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The thing is that there are a lot of myths around sexual harassment in our society. And women's clothes somehow are at the top. Right. What sort of clothes are you wearing? You are asking for it. A lot of people say, I think the most common myth around sexual harassment is that women ask for it, whether it's sexual harassment or rape. I hear even educated people say that if a woman doesn't want, or if she's not interested, a man cannot do anything to her, which is not true. It's just a myth. People who are working, like Dr. Fawzia said, the Asha movement, she started that work for 10 years to get the anti-sexual harassment laws passed in Pakistan. They did very extensive research and a lot of work on sexual harassment in the Pakistani society. And they say with a lot of confidence that 100% of our women get sexually harassed. Whether they get harassed once in their lifetime, or if they use public transport, maybe they get harassed a number of times in a day. So if a lot of people believe that women ask for it, it gives you chills when you think that 100% of Pakistani women ask to be sexually harassed. It's just not possible. And experiencing sexual harassment is very painful. Why would anyone want to go through a painful experience? In our society, I know in the States, I'm sure it's very different. I know it is very different, but in Pakistan, when young girls go out wearing jeans or tights, people say that they're asking for it. In some of the bigger cities, girls don't wear dupatta anymore. As long as their bodies are covered, it doesn't say anywhere that you have to wear a certain design of clothes, or shalwar, kameez, and dupatta. And even that is not enough. A chadar or hijab or a bhai, it doesn't matter what you're wearing. Even girls that are in parda, girls that wear hijab, even they get sexually harassed. So clothes, and it's not only girls who get sexually harassed. We know that boys, transgenders, they get sexually harassed too. What about little boys in madrasas being sexually harassed by the Maulvi Sahab? Or younger boys getting sexually harassed in a dorm or in a cadet college, or we know what happens in prisons, in orphanages, wherever we have all male environment. Boys get sexually harassed by elder boys, older boys, or by men. Men get sexually harassed by other men. When men get harassed, nobody says that they get harassed because of the clothes that they wear. So why is it that when it comes to women being harassed or raped, we blame them for being harassed, and we blame the clothes they got harassed because of the way they were dressed? If we really think about it, it's kind of interesting to note that a woman does something wrong, she's a bad woman. When she gets harassed or raped, it's her fault. When a man harasses a woman, we all, not only men, but even our women, protect men who are behaving inappropriately. And we blame the woman or the girl who is harassed. It's interesting to note, because we live in a patriarchal society and men have a higher status, we protect them. We all protect them because of their status. But then what happens when a boy or a man gets sexually harassed? What does the society do then? For one, boys don't speak out. They don't report cases, or not as much, because we've burdened them so much. They are the providers, they are the protectors, they are the decision makers, their role in a patriarchal system. So how can a man or how can a boy go home and say that I was sexually harassed? The family will say that if he cannot even protect himself, how will he protect us? Then, a lot of questions are raised on their masculinity. So they don't speak out. Even when we find out that a boy is being sexually assaulted or abused or harassed, we close our eyes as a society. We don't know what to do. Which means that we're really being unfair to the boy who is being harassed, and we are being unfair to the girls who are being harassed. So it's really something that we seriously need to think about. What is my thinking? And what am I going to do about it?
Miss Malia,
Yes.
we have a couple comments, questions on our chat. I would like to call on Miss Sabah Mahmood to elaborate. She said, "What do women know?" Miss Mahmood, would you like to elaborate on that? The floor is yours. I think she's on mute at the moment. Yeah. She is. Oh, there. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum, Maliapa. My name is Sabah Mahmood. I'm chair of board trustee of Alliance. Yes, that's the most common thing, that when a woman is trying to speak their mind or giving any idea, a lot of men still here in Pakistan, in US, they say, "What do women know?" This is from my personal experience when I was working for an arrangement for a Pakistani organization event, and I was trying to do a certain seating arrangement with the banquet manager, who of course was a female too.
Yeah.
One of the doctors, he walked in and talked to the banquet manager, and he did not like the arrangement, so he started to show his authority, because this was his exact comment. Oh, please do not listen to them. What do women know?
Yep.
So this is still happening in America. I mean, and
Yes.
my second thing is, though we are so educated and we are excelling in so many places, but still in America, women, it's a research, and they're trying to enact bills. Women are paid less than males for the same amount they do, for the same amount of work they've been doing. Thank you.
You are so right, Sabah. You are so right. And men and even women, all we need to do is just start seriously thinking about what we say and why we say it. It's all, it's gender. The way we are raised in our families, these are direct or indirect messages that we have heard all our lives. Because of living in a patriarchal system, the gender roles that the society makes for men, women, and transgenders, this is a result of that, basically. I really believe that we should have classes on gender, like mandatory classes for gender in all schools, colleges, and universities. Like I said a little, 10 minutes ago, that men have a higher status in the society in a patriarchal system. Women have a lower status. It's the society that makes these distinctions. Because the society says that women have a lower status, they add such messages in our literature, in our poetry. If you see the words that are used for women in Urdu, naqsul akal, somebody who has no wisdom, or paon ki juti, or when you want to demean a man, you present them with bangles. तुम तो चूड़ियां पहन के बैठ जाओ. It's just a matter of thinking about it and talking about it. And even educated men that I talk to, I do a lot of gender sessions also. When you explain it to them once, why we say the things we say, they are so surprised at their own, like at themselves, that how come we never thought about it this way before? It's all our socialization. That's all it is. We, when we raise our children, our sons and daughters at home, we need to make sure that we treat them equally. Just start monitoring your own language and how you treat your son and your daughter at home. Do you treat them differently, or do you treat them as equals? Because this is where children learn. You might not say it in so many words, but children are very intelligent. They pick these things from what they see and from what they hear from other people. So we just need to become conscious of it, start talking about it at home, whenever we are sitting in a group, just talking about it, educating ourselves. It's not only men who do that. I've seen a lot of women do that too. Do we have everyone here who understands Urdu, or do we have any people who don't understand Urdu?
I think
Most of
Anyone
the
who
people.
doesn't? Anyone
I
here
can
who doesn't?
understand. I can understand Urdu.
Okay, good. Because I just wanted to share something in Urdu. I hear in Pakistan, I hear some very educated women who are working, very educated and have very good jobs, making very good money. And they say कि कमाते तो हैं, लेकिन हमारी कमाई में वो बरकत तो नहीं ना जो मर्दों की कमाई में होती है. And they really believe that. And I always tell them that, if there was no barakat in my kamai, I'd never be able to make it. I don't make a lot of money, but, it's our faith. We say that if we work hard and if we work honestly, there will be barakat in our earnings. I know, I believe it. Sending my children to private universities, I don't know how I was able to manage it, but I did. And I believe that it was barakat. So why would there be no barakat in a woman's kamai? I don't understand, because a lot of women also believe that they are somehow beneath men. They're not as good as men. So I think the more we talk about it, it's just a matter of educating ourselves, men, women, transgenders, everyone, and hopefully we'll come out of it. But the way things are right now, you are absolutely true. Absolutely right. This is how a lot of our people think, men and women. Unfortunate, but it's true. Was there another question or comment?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Yes. I'll pass it on to Mr. Shehzad Iqbal. If you would like to, it looks like you have two questions.
Okay.
I think he might be under Miss Anila's account right now. Miss Anila, do you want to speak on behalf of? No.
Have they written the
Yeah.
questions?
I'll just read it. So this is Shehzad Iqbal. There are cultural differences that can lead to wiring impression at times. What's one best defense in such cases? And then he says, in medical practice, it's advised to have a female chaperone during examination of a female patient. Is that enough to prevent oneself from sexual harassment allegations? And Miss Malia, I don't know if you see the chat, but if you'd like to just also, just read it yourself as well, you're more than welcome to. It's on your.
In the medical profession, the second part, the first one I didn't quite get, but the second one, having a female in the room when you are working with female patients, I think is a good idea. And not only in medical profession, I see a lot of teachers in universities do that too. Male teachers, they either keep the door open, but with doctors, I understand that they need to close the door. So having another female, I think, is a very good idea. They do that, or they have that practice in Pakistan also. Whenever a male doctor is seeing a female patient, they make sure that there's another female in the room, a nurse or anyone from their staff. And I think that is, it should be enough unless the doctor and the female assistant or whoever the other female is are sort of in on it. And because we see that happen once in a while, where a man and a woman get together and they either sexually harass the other person or make false claims of sexual harassment against another person. So there are all sorts of scenarios, but I think it's a good idea to have a second person in the room, and preferably a female in the room when you are working with female patients. If any of you got the first question, would any of you like to?
So the first question was, there are cultural differences that can lead to that can lead to wrong impression at times. What's one best defense in such cases?
I think it's important to just let the other person know what your expectations are, or if something is making you uncomfortable. Because I was talking to a Britisher the other day, somebody from Wales, and they say that, the area, the part of Wales that I come from, we use the word love in almost every sentence. Love, will you give this to me? And love, will you get me a glass of water? And love, will you do this? And very unconsciously, he would use the word love even when he was at work. And he's been working here for quite a few years now. And Pakistanis generally don't object to anything that a foreigner does. But there was another British woman from a different area, and it made her very uncomfortable whenever he called her or used the word love when talking to her. So after a few days, she came up to him and she said that, when you use this word so often, love, when you're talking to me, it makes me very uncomfortable. And this person was sharing his experience at a later time. And he said that, I was so embarrassed because I never even thought that my using this word could make another person uncomfortable. He said that this is how I grew up. This is what I grew up hearing other people, use this word. And he said that since that day, I've become very conscious and I try and control myself. So sometimes, yes, we come from different cultures, that cultural differences, but I think the best thing is to let the other person know if something makes you uncomfortable, because they might or might not be doing it intentionally. And if they don't know, if we don't let them know, they will continue doing it. If we don't shake hands with the man, Pakistani women, and if somebody extends their hand, it could make you uncomfortable. You don't not want to shake their hand. And if you do shake their hand, you feel very uncomfortable. So it's always best to say that, I'd like to refrain from it, or we don't do this in our culture. Being very open and assertive about it. not feeling bad, because we all do come from different cultures. And there are certain things that make us uncomfortable. It's our job to let the other person know. So I think that in my experience, that always works. Saying it very politely because we don't want to offend the other person, but letting them know very clearly, very clear communication.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yes, Ms. Nazia Huck, she asked
Yes.
it looks like two questions. If she would like, she can unmute herself and ask those questions.
Assalamu alaikum. This is a very informative session and I'm really enjoying it. But I just wanted to, this was not a question, it was just that even in the United States, sexual harassment does exist very much in the corporate world.
Yes.
And then working in the corporate world, I do feel that women have to continuously prove themselves and have to work extra hard, or maybe even double or triple the amount to get that same recognition. What can be done about this?
This is again living in a patriarchal society, in a male-dominating society, male-dominated society. I really seriously believe that talking about gender is very important. The more we talk about it, it needs to be a mandatory part, a course in all universities. Because that's all it is. You know, once you tell people about it, you'll be surprised how many people act so, they're amazed at the fact that they never thought about it before. We just need to start talking about it. In the corporate sector, to asking HR to have a gender session, a session on gender for all the employees, senior management or HR are the ones who can do it within organizations. If any of you is involved in the academia, schools, colleges, universities, that is where we need to do it. But I think to start out, what each one of us can do is start talking about it at home. We can talk to our children, we can talk to our families, we can talk to our friends, because there really is no difference. All human beings are the same. The way we treat, I know in Pakistan, we still don't treat transgenders as equal. Only a few years ago, the first law was passed where they were given, certain rights that they did not have before. They could not get an identity card made. So it's very embarrassing when I think about it now, that how come I didn't do anything about it before now? So it's just a matter of starting to talk about these things. It's just a realization that we need to have. And most of the people get it. They don't do it because they have something against women. It's just how things have been for a very long time, and they just continue the status quo. So doing something about it is important. Speaking out, using social media, whatever chance we all get to talk about it. And then if somebody is brave enough to really take a stand, if you're not being paid the same as a man on the same position, I know I've done it. In the organization I worked at, Women Venture, when I lived in Minnesota. You know, when people are not paid the same, taking a stand, and once I, explained it to them logically, they did raise my salary. They weren't doing it intentionally. I'm not the sort of person who stands up, for herself, but I did because it bothered me a lot. why would they do this? I work equally hard. Why shouldn't I get paid the same? And I was able to, make a difference. So that I think we really need to uh, realizing that it's happening is the first step. But then, asking ourselves, what am I going to do about it? If we don't do anything, if I don't do anything, why will somebody else? We always expect that somebody else will do something about it, or somebody should do something about it. And everyone keeps thinking that. If we want something changed, we have to take the first step. Because the process of change always begins within.
Mm.
If I see something wrong around me, I have to take the first step. And only then things will start changing. So that is what I do now. When I want something changed, I always ask myself, what am I going to do about it? And things do change.
Very nice. Thank you. Some really good questions coming in. The first one, and I'll actually ask on behalf of them. The first one's from Miss Sabah Mahmood. She's asking, how can you prove sexual harassment if it's happening behind closed doors?
Yep. Yes, that always becomes problematic, but it's not impossible. People who harass others sexually generally don't do it to one person once. Usually they are habitual. They've harassed other people at other times. Some of them harass a number of people at a time, even if it's behind closed doors. So in the Pakistani law, we have a mechanism that the law gives to organizations that they are supposed to institutionalize, which means that every organization in Pakistan is supposed to have a standing inquiry committee with at least one female member. Any case of sexual harassment goes to that committee. They are given a procedure and a timeline in the law that they're supposed to follow. And when that inquiry committee in the states, when you report a case of sexual harassment to whatever the mechanism is, whether you go to HR or a grievance committee, when you start conducting an inquiry, the committee or a person in HR or whoever that person might be, when you start talking to people around the harasser, one person at a time in confidentiality, in most cases, you get more than enough information to decide on a case. Because the same person, in most cases, has harassed other people also, or is harassing other people. So that is one thing. Another thing that I usually tell people is that, recording somebody, audio or video, without the other person's permission is unethical. But if somebody is sexually harassing you, and if you don't have a way to prove, and you've really had it, with them, I really feel that if you, without telling them, record what they're saying, and then use it as evidence, because you're basically doing it in self-defense. And I know even in the States, you can shoot a person in self-defense to save your own life, and it is accepted. So if you can record somebody, if somebody, when you go to their office or to their room and they say inappropriate things, what I say is that, turn on the recording on your phone. Everybody has a cell phone these days and they're carrying it with them. so the other person won't be suspicious. Turn on the recording, go to the room. When they say something inappropriate, it gets recorded, use it as evidence, because you're doing it to protect yourself, to stop the other person. And one other thing that I'd like to say is that if somebody is saying something inappropriate, and if you turn around and stop them, a lot of people don't expect you to say anything. So if you let them know that whatever they're saying or doing is making you very uncomfortable and you don't want them to do it again, sometimes the other person is really surprised because they're not expecting something like this from you, and they stop. But then you have to be very careful. If you expect a reaction from them, or if you feel that you could lose your job, or the other person could harm you, I don't know how, but physically or in some way, you need to be careful, but letting the other person know. Sometimes what I've seen, I know in Pakistan, and I've literally seen it, that when a senior male person says something inappropriate to a younger girl, they don't like it, they want to say something, but they don't even want to upset the senior male person. Their shoulders are stooped, they have a big smile on their face, and it just irritates me so much. But they say, please don't say this. I don't like it when you say this. So a smile means that you like whatever you heard. The way you are saying it, the other person, you're giving them mixed messages. Your communication to the other person that you did not like what he or she just said or did, a clear message. If you study communication, 7% of it is, I think, verbal, and 93% is non-verbal. So when you're telling somebody that you did not like what they just said, you need to be standing straight, shoulders back, head high, very serious expression on your face, firm voice. And then if you tell them that I really did not appreciate what you just said, you're giving them a clear message. It's really important to stop the other person. And if after you've tried to stop them, they continue behaving inappropriately, then it's important to inform somebody. Or try and record them. Even when you're saying no to them, if you want to record it. Because if you have a relationship with that person, if you both are working in the same office or whatever that relationship might be, then you really need to do something about it. Try and get evidence, try and stop the person, and if you can't do it, report it. When they conduct an inquiry, in most cases, they are able to prove such cases, even when there's no evidence and no witnesses. Hope that helps.
Thank you. The next question, it's actually really great. I have a young son too. So the question, it comes from Miss Anila Shehzad. Any recommendations on how to raise our sons so they don't make these mistakes?
Treat them as human beings, as equal human beings. If you respect them, they'll respect others. I see a lot of our people, especially Pakistani people, they don't respect their children. They say, their children, what do they know? We don't realize that children have self-respect just the way we do. And they are complete human beings. They just haven't learned a lot, and they don't have the knowledge that older people do because they're very young. but they are complete human beings who need to be loved and cared for and respected. When you respect them, when you treat them the way you want them to treat other people, that's the best way to teach them to become good human beings, gentle, caring, loving, respecting others. I have really found this to be the best way of raising our sons and daughters. Don't make them submissive, don't make them aggressive, just make them good human beings. The environment that you have at home, that is where they learn how to treat other people. Standing up for their rights, everyone, boys and girls, and taking care of others. And that is how they will grow up to be sensible, responsible young men. That's how they will grow up, taking care of others, not hurting them. And when they do something wrong as they are growing up, because children test your patience, they try and do things that you tell them not to do. Even though telling children not to do something is not a very good idea, telling them the consequences of what can happen when you do this, this is what happens to the other person. When you pull their hair, it hurts. We don't want to hurt other people because it's not good. But if they do that to us, we hurt. So when we don't like being hurt, nobody likes being hurt. Explaining it to them, it's a lot of work. But when we say, don't do this, not a very good idea, because they don't know why you're telling them not to do something that they like to do. So explaining it to them, and how the grown-ups, the elders in the family, the adults in the family treat one another, and how you treat your children. I think that is the best way to make them sensitive adults. They'll grow up to be sensitive people that don't behave inappropriately around others.
That's great. Great advice. Thanks. Next one is from Ms. Nazia Hussain. She's asking, how can one prove that he or she was a victim of harassment if it's her word against his?
Yeah, it will depend a lot on the scenario. And like I said earlier, if somebody's like, if it is in a work environment, when an inquiry is conducted, even when it's her word against his, when you conduct an inquiry, if that person has harassed other women or other people in the past, or even at the same time in present, they do find out. Because it's very seldom when one person harasses a woman just once, or just one woman. Generally, a person who harasses is habitual. They behave in the same manner around other women also. But I don't know why we keep talking about women being harassed. Men also get harassed by other men and by women. So we just need to create a little bit of safe space where whoever is harassed, whether it's a man or a woman or a transgender, they need to be able to speak out without the fear of being judged or stigmatized or ridiculed. Because, I have one daughter and I have two sons. And I wouldn't want any of my children to be harassed or hurt in any way. So letting them know that if anyone in whatever environment it is harassed, we want you to speak out. Encouraging them on and off. Saying that we don't want any of our employees or any of our group members being harassed. We want this to be a dignified environment. And we will take strict action against the person who harasses, not necessarily men, but whoever harasses. And creating that environment is very important when people speak out. So letting them know what kind of behavior constitutes sexual harassment, because I know quite a few men who harass women because what they've heard all their lives is that this is what men do. Men are men, they do this. Boys are boys. This is how they behave. If they don't act out this way, at times there are questions on their masculinity. So telling them that we have a harassment-free environment, this is what is acceptable here, this is what is not acceptable. And we will take strict action against the person who harasses. So saying it first is very important before we start holding others accountable. But coming back to Nazia's question, when we start asking other people around that harasser, in most cases, we do find enough information to decide on what the facts were of that case.
Great. Thank you so much. Next one is from Ms. Aruj. Ms. Aruj, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask the question, that'd be great.
Yes, madam, I have a question that if someone is looking continuously in any event or any place, is this harassment?
Sorry, would you repeat that, please? Is it my...
If someone is looking continuously in any event or any place, is this harassment?
If it's making you
Which
uncomfortable, yes, it is. Yeah. If somebody's staring at you and they're making you uncomfortable, it is sexual harassment. And you can address that
then
in a
what we can
number
do?
of ways. You can either start staring back at them, or you can very politely ask them, is there something I can do for you? Did you want to say something to me? And usually, you know, they are taken aback because they're not expecting you to say anything. And most of the times, people do stop. And at times, they are very embarrassed because you called them on. But doing something is very important. Or, you know, you can sort of frown and look at them, letting them know that you don't appreciate them staring at you. At times, they stop. If they don't, just say something. Because they're only staring. And most people, depending on where you are and who is staring at you. If it's a gathering of friends, you call somebody out and they'll be really embarrassed because they don't want others to think of them as a harasser, as somebody who behaves inappropriately. So doing something is important. You know, it's high time we start speaking out. In Pakistan, I know Pakistani girls are raised to be very submissive. Not that all girls are, things are slowly changing. Girls are starting to live their lives the way they want to and fighting for their rights. They're struggling and they are accomplishing a lot. So we need to continue that process of change. No matter how old we are, we have a right to live a respectful life. We need to first respect ourselves as complete human beings, and then make sure that others around us respect us. If they do something inappropriate, I deserve to be respected, and I'm going to stop them from behaving inappropriately around me. With the confidence that how dare somebody do this?
Yeah.
Being respectful, but being firm and being assertive is very important.
Great, thank you. Have an anonymous question here. I'm going to try to kind of phrase it as best as I can, but it's, is there any evidence that like psychiatric diseases run in families, does sexual harassment also take as the psych phenomenon? So I guess maybe they're asking, do psychiatric diseases that are in the families have any sort of connection with sexual harassment? Maybe. Yeah.
Now, I'm not a medical person, so I'm not very familiar with, or I'm not aware of any diseases. But I think in most cases, if you clearly tell the other person that if you behave this way, there will be consequences and you will be held accountable. And if they still do it, they need to be held accountable. And if we find out that, it's a medical condition, then they need to be in an institution where they are treated, not running around behaving inappropriately around other people. But unfortunately, not being a medical person, I'm not aware of any such diseases. What I have seen is that when you let people know, most people have control on their behavior. Necrophilia is a medical condition. In Pakistan, there was a case a few years ago where there was a group of young men in Karachi. They would dig up graves of women who had died, fresh graves, and rape them. Not all of them had necrophilia. It wasn't because they were sick. It was because they weren't brave enough to rape. I shouldn't be saying this. Because they didn't have it in them to have a relationship with a woman who was alive. They wanted to do it, so they did it with dead women. We need to do something about it. Not everybody is sick. Maybe they are, but then if they are sick, they can't be, out in the open, behaving this way around other people. They need to be in some sort of a facility where they're treated for it.
Yeah. Thank you. Ms. Nazia Hussain asked, yeah, it's actually back-to-back questions, so maybe you can address both.
Yes.
But the first one is common swear words are rooted in misogyny. How do you change that? And then, I don't know if this can go hand in hand. What is Hudud Ordinance?
Hudud Ordinance was the gift of General Ziaul Haq. The first one, swear words. A lot of swear words in Urdu, Punjabi, our languages. That are sort of, use women. Swear words using daughters and mothers and sisters. Just calling out people who use those words. I know maybe because of my age, but even when I hear somebody use those swear words when I'm out in the market, I just stop there and I let them have it. And once in a while, people don't care. But in most cases, I've noticed that they do get embarrassed and they do apologize. I'm going to my bank and the security guard talking to another security guard and using a swear word like that. And I just stop there and I look at them and say, what did you just say? And they say, I'm very sorry, ma'am. I didn't realize. And they say, better make sure that you don't ever use this word again. So calling on people, making them realize that it is a bad word, you should not be using it. On the one hand, our people say that, it's not true that we don't respect our women. We have a lot of respect for our mothers, my behne betiyan, mothers, daughters, and mothers, sisters, and daughters. I don't know if they say that in the States also, Pakistanis. माओ बहनों बेटियों की बहुत इज्जत करते हैं. By the way, wives are not included. I don't know why. But then, at the same time, they do use these inappropriate bad words, swear words. So making sure that these words are not used in our household. Our children know that these are bad words, not to use them. And if somebody in the community uses them, just call them up. If they weren't educated or socialized properly, then we will socialize them. We will make them realize that the words they are using, they should not be using, if they have any respect for those around them. Right?
Thank you.
Let's see, what was the second one?
So that is, what is Hudud ordinance?
Hudud ordinance.
And we can, this will be our last question. So
Okay.
feel free to,
All
yeah.
right. Hudud ordinance, I don't know a lot about, but the thing that comes up a lot was that Zia Saab had said that he had lumped rape and adultery as one. And Hudud ordinance says that, which is kind of, it's a law that was passed when Zia Saab was ruling Pakistan, that when a woman is raped, she needs to have 4 Muslim men as witnesses. And of course, there are never 4 Muslim men with good character as witnesses. So in those days, after the Hudud ordinance was passed, our jails were filled up with women. And there was no differentiation between adultery and rape. So when Musharraf Saab came into power, this was one of the good things that he did, that he removed rape from Hudud ordinance, from that law. There are other things in it also. And he put it back in the Pakistan Penal Code, which is our mainstream laws, like a thick book which has a lot of laws. One of them was on rape. So he took rape out of the Hudud ordinance, put it back in the Pakistan Penal Code. So now if a woman is raped, she can report her case, even though most of the cases, like hardly 10% of our rape cases are reported, and the rate of conviction, unfortunately, is very low. It's less than 1%. In the lower cases, I think it's up to 4%, but then they always go and appeal. And in the higher courts, it's less than 1%, the rate of conviction. But at least it's out of the Hudud ordinance and it's back in the PPC. So rape cases can be reported. Sorry, I don't know a whole lot about it, but this is what we keep talking about.
Thank you, ma'am. You were very, very informative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maliapa. On behalf of my executive committee, I would like to thank you for coming and giving such an informative talk. I'm sure it will help a lot of people who are listening. And I mean, it's such a taboo topic. Like you said, nobody wants to talk about it. But thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for giving us your time. And can't wait to talk to you real soon again on a different topic.
Sure. Thank you very much for inviting me. It was really nice connecting with all of you.
Thank you.
Real pleasure. Real pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Love this.
Hafiz.